Hello and welcome to episode 72 of Third and Wrong. I'm your co-host Stephen Bolin, and we're all laughing because Zach's back. And what a treat
Yeah,
that is. So let's go right to Zach first. Zach, how was that religious retreat you're at? I know you were there for a month or so, and you had to travel all around and learned a lot of cool things. So tell us about that.
spreading the great word, nothing like it. Really good. No, wasn't doing that. Wrote my test, passed my finance test. Super stoked about that, guys. But very excited to be back, living the dream on the pod with you guys. You
Hey,
know it. Talking football, nothing better.
there it is. And Ozzy, how are things with you, my friend?
Oh, I'm just living the dream. Uh, no, it's a scorcher out there. So Zach didn't do
Yeah.
his weather update, but it's a scorcher, heat warning, and it is what it is. It's time to stay inside. AC. Let's AC this place.
For those wondering, I am profusely sweating right now, so you can think about that throughout the duration of this episode. Guys, speaking of sweating, the NFL announced that training camps are back, and they have some dates. I think a lot of rookies are going to start reporting in the next couple of days, but there's been some issues of the NFL not exactly providing thorough safety protocols for all this, and I think it was just yesterday that 50 or so players tested positive for coronavirus. And key players could sit out this season. That's being speculated upon. I know there's a big blitz of players coming out on Sunday talking about these safety protocols, and there's been a little bit development since, but I think they're hoping for more. Uh, let's just kind of take a big picture look at this thing, you guys. Do you think they already canceled the preseason? Do you think the season's going to go along as normal, or do you expect some degree of hiccups or star players sitting out? I know Russell Wilson is very vocal. His wife is pregnant right now, and he's quite concerned about reporting and contract that himself, taking it home. And obviously that's a vulnerable person to be catching that. But we'll go to Zach first because he's back, and none of us are medical experts, but just kind of based on our feeling and what we've seen, do you see the season and training camps going on as normal, or what do you feel?
Something's going to be different. And like everything with every league right now, there's going to be something different. We're already seeing some differences with preseason. I think we're going to see some players sit out. I don't know what we're going to see with the season. I hope we get our full 16 game season.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be very weird going into the season without with the NFL having always extended preseason of 4 games. It's always kind of fun if you're a really in-depth fan knowing about your free agents that are on there trying to make the team and all that. It's going to be a weird year for those guys trying to get to a roster. But I'm not too sure what the season's going to look like, but I do believe there is going to be some hiccups. There's a lot of big name players coming out right now. And, I'm going to look at it more from an NFL side. This is actually the league that's had the most time to kind of plan for this right now. I think they should have had safety precautions, making the players feel safe, kind of one of their first priorities. So hopefully they have something in the vault in the back or something, because they had a lot of time to think about that. I don't know if I'm going off the rail on that one, but it feels kind of like you should have been a little bit more prepared, NFL.
I think they were hoping that this would be under control by now, and that is not the case, especially in the United States. And without diving too far into why that's the case, we just know that it is not under control in the U.S. Ozzy, what are your thoughts on the season getting off to a smooth start as much as they can with preseason already being canceled?
I had high hopes that we would get 16 games out of it, seeing as they canceled the preseason. I thought that would be a good time to further kind of get whatever they needed to get their ducks in a row in terms of player safety and stuff like that. But you still have guys like JJ Watt, who is kind of, I wouldn't even say it's passive aggressively. He's aggressively kind of putting out there what is happening on Twitter. And some of the points that he's making, that he's just kind of listing off, they aren't a good look for the NFL. It's like, Zach, you're right. They've had so much time to think about this, and it sounds like they haven't even considered player testing, or they didn't, as of last week or 2 weeks ago, they didn't even have that on the table. So they just got that back on the table, which is nice. But you got leagues like the NHL and the NBA that are starting up in just a couple of weeks here, a week and a half or so. And you would think that the NFL, ever since the draft, like after the draft, what is there? There's meetings or whatever the case, but there was none of that this year with COVID. So you were able to have a really good product in the NFL draft in a very short period, but that ever since then they had all this time that they could have been ironing out these details. And with Steve, the only thing that would make sense is that they just haven't been preparing for it, thinking that it was going to be gone by now, like you kind of said. So I still have hopes that there is a 16 game season. I'm not going to be hurt if it's reduced down to like 12 or whatever the case. It would suck for sure, but it's definitely not one of those things where it would be totally unexpected at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like I feel like they could have gone through some more precautions over the last few months, just to kind of have a start date and have a plan in place. But here we are.
It's weird because we're getting news from like different ends of the spectrum, because the Atlanta Falcons just announced today that they'd be allowing 10 to 20,000 fans at the Mercedes-Benz stadium. I was going to say Superdome, that's New Orleans. But mandatory masks, and who knows if like concessions and stuff will be open, but it's going to be like social distancing going to be enforced. And like, God help those ushers if they're still serving alcohol and you have a bunch of rabid fans that you're trying to enforce them to wear masks when they're yelling and cheering for their team. And if they're high-fiving their friends when they should be, 6 seats apart or something, like it's going to be tough for them. I almost was thinking that they should just, lock all the doors for the season as far as fans go, but it sounds like they're going to try to make a run out of it. But then on the other side of things, you have players that are like, well, we don't even know if we're going to get consistent testing and stuff like that. So what's up with that? And it's just kind of two ends of the mouth are talking. I don't know how that saying goes. Both sides of the mouth are talking. Like no one knows what's really going on right now. And I think until there's a consistent protocol, we're all going to kind of be wondering the same thing over the next couple of weeks. So, but we'll leave that to the experts. Let's get on to some actual football news, guys. Antonio Brown has retired again. Feel like it's deja vu. We've probably announced that a couple times on this podcast, and sure enough, he always looks like he's making a comeback. This a couple weeks after it was shown he was training in Russell Wilson's backyard. Russell Wilson's backyard contains a full-sized NFL football field, so good place to get some reps in. So led many to speculate that.
Sick break, Steve.
Hey, well, it's not my backyard, man. Mine has a fire.
It's your quarterback.
So it's my quarterback, though. Not my quarterback. I'm a fan of quarterback. Anyways, led many to speculate that AB maybe potentially be going to the Seahawks. Not the case, because now he is retired for now. This is just in a retirement on Twitter. I guess whether or not it's for sure or not, guys, I kind of want to take a look at it like this. Looking back on the last decade, how are you going to remember Antonio Brown? Are you going to remember him for being one of the great receivers of this game? Because he was, and the stats proved it. Or are you going to remember him for what has transpired over the last, what has it been, a year and a half or 2 years? Again, my perception of time has all been skewed since March. But I personally, and maybe it's just recency bias, it's really going to be tough to remember him as that great receiver in Pittsburgh, as opposed to what has went down in Oakland, New England, and everything since. And whether or not he settles out his off the field stuff, I think his legacy's tarnished. I'll just put it up straight up like that. We'll go to Ozzy first, because he spent some time with the Patriots. How are you going to remember AB's tenure in the NFL?
Yeah, it's really tough to have a big picture lens on it right now, just because you think 5-10 years from now, are we going to be talking about him? But as of right now, I think that it's easy to say that he is one of the greats. I think what we'll do is we'll end up saying he was really good, but he had a very kind of poor ending, which is exactly what happened. But I think that we're going to be able to talk about the other greats in the NFL over the 2010s that will end up making their names over Antonio Brown. Because at the end of the day, it's one of those things where character plays a huge role in terms of, are you going to get into the Hall of Fame? And I think with a domestic violence case on him right now, among various other things that happened, I think that you're going to start down the road. We'll be talking about guys like Calvin Johnson over Antonio Brown, and Calvin Johnson retired in 2014, 2013. So I think even guys like that are going to be more talked about, since
Julio Jones,
another one, Demaryius Thomas, AJ Green. Larry Fitzgerald for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So these guys are going to be in that conversation, I think, over and above Antonio Brown. And for whatever, like, what that means exactly in terms of how other people view it, I'm not sure. But I think that that's going to be something that when you talk about the Hall of Fame conversation, I think that those guys are going to be getting in before Antonio Brown because of like his transgressions in the past.
You even look at Terrell Owens, who's a lot of his, antics, if you will. I've watched his like football life, and he really explained himself well, but a lot of that was contained to on the field, like feuds with quarterbacks and coaches. He didn't get into the Hall of Fame till 2018, and I think he retired in 2012. Remember, he had a preseason with the Seahawks, which was pretty funny to watch. But and it took him. I'm not sure what the minimum you have to wait, but he got in. I think he was put in a lot later than what many thought. I thought he was gonna be first ballot. I don't think he was. And that's just on-field stuff. Zach, what's your take on AB's legacy as a whole? Obviously, the Browns had to deal with him in the division there for the last decade.
Right. No, not doubting his talents at all. The guy is a very talented receiver. The thing is, and especially in pro sports, not just Joe Smith down the street, when you tarnish your name with something so drastic, as Ozzy alluded to earlier, it's going to take him a long time to just even overcome that. Like if he was to come out of retirement again and produce at a high level, think about the guys who have been through those kind of crazy antics, doing something. So it took Michael Vick, and I'm not comparing the situation completely. It took Michael Vick a long time to rebuild some of that, so to speak. What do you call
trust
that?
with
rapport back, trust with fans. Yeah. Exactly. It took him a long time to earn that back. And it took a lot of time of like progressively growing. And AB has a lot of things going on that aren't just like football related. There were times where people were really scared for him when he was going through all that craziness with the Raiders and then moving on and stuff like that. There's some other stuff going on there. So, if this retirement is something for him to go off and focus on himself, I'm really happy for that. But comparatively to all the other wide receivers of right now, he's got to fix it now and make a comeback and show he's changed and do those things, even for my opinion, to make the Hall of Fame at this point. Like there's a lot of fixing that needs to happen. I guess that might be a bad word of saying it, but there were a lot of hurt feelings going out on that one. So
yeah, he definitely burned a lot of bridges on his way out, and definitely didn't make a lot of friends with kind of how things ended with the Raiders and the Patriots even to a degree. So
I had to look it up. Sorry, before we move on. Totally, I had to look it up. Calvin Johnson retired in 2015. So
wow.
Zach gave me a look when I had said that, so I knew it. I screwed up somewhere along the line. So thank you, Zach, for giving me the look.
You said 2014. It's freaking all the same.
What's with Detroit Lions like star all-time players retiring before their primes are up, like Barry Sanders in the late 90s and then Calvin Johnson in 2015? Like it's just cursed. The whole place is cursed.
Yeah,
and it's not getting
the Browns, man.
Well, I think that even if we want to open up an old wound, the fact that the Lions didn't want to pay Calvin Johnson what was left on his contract or whatever after almost 10 years of being with the team and him retiring, they're like, oh, we don't really want to pay ya. It's like, I mean, the man brought in some money for your organization.
Yeah, he was only the face of your franchise for a decade. But guys, the D word's been getting thrown around quite a bit here, and that D word is dynasty. You guys are holding your breath there for a second. Not that much of a loose cannon. The Kansas City Chiefs, guys, a lot of people after Patrick Mahomes' mega contract and re-signing Chris Jones, they're thinking dynasty. And maybe it's not just Chiefs fans, it's media in general. They're starting to throw it around. It gets clicks. And we're going to talk about it. So it's really hard to look at teams that win a Super Bowl and you have to then to predict if they're going to be a dynasty or not. I mean, you look at, there's the Niners of the 80s, the Steelers of the 70s, the Cowboys of the 90s, and then the Patriots of like the last 20 years, because you can't really, of the 2010s, they won the most Super Bowls in there as well as the 2000s. But when I look at other teams that have won a Super Bowl, I mean, when the Giants won it in 2011, I didn't think dynasty. That was just Eli Manning getting hot. When Flacco and the Ravens won it. I didn't think Dynasty, that was Flacco on a hot run. Out of the last teams that have won Super Bowls in the last decade, the only two teams I really thought had potential to be dynasties were the Green Bay Packers in 2010, because Rodgers was just coming into his own and thought he had a whole like decade and career in front of him to go win multiple Super Bowls, and his front office just kind of gave up. Maybe not gave up, they got cheap. And then the other team is, selfishly, and we're going to talk about them later, is the Seattle Seahawks. When they beat the Broncos 43-8, they had a young defense. They had Russell Wilson on a rookie deal. They go back-to-back Super Bowls, first team to do that since New England in 03-04. Obviously, they lose, and things kind of come unglued from a culture standpoint because everyone kind of turned on Pete and Russ, everyone being Richard Sherman and, some of that core components on the defense. Those two teams I thought would be dynasties. They never materialized. But when I look at the Kansas City Chiefs, it strikes me as a little differently, because I feel like Andy Reid isn't going to let other teams come by, or other coaches come by and lap him. And I feel like that's what happened to Pete Carroll and Mike McCarthy, is they kind of got too set in their own ways, and other coaches and the schemes and everything caught up to them, and then they got lapped. And now we've seen Pete Carroll still trying to establish the run in 2020, which, we'll get to that another time, maybe later this episode. But when I look at the Chiefs, I see Patrick Mahomes, I see Andy Reid, and I see a really innovative mind, even at Andy Reid's age. I think he's getting up there. I think this team is probably the most likely team to be a dynasty, aside from the Patriots, than any other team we've seen win the Super Bowl over the last decade. And I don't think the dynasty talk is too far out to lunch. They were obviously a coin toss away from winning 2 straight Super Bowls, because I believe they would have destroyed the Rams if they had made it the year before, the year the Patriots got there. Solidifying their dynasty. But I wanted your guys' take. I think Kansas City can be the next great dynasty in the NFL. Zach Foth, do you believe the Kansas City Chiefs can be the next great dynasty, or do you think it's too soon to be having that conversation after an AFC Championship appearance and a Super Bowl victory over the last 2 years? Patrick Mahomes has been the starting quarterback.
Well, my friend, I don't think it's too far out to lunch anyways. I think there's potential here. Patrick Mahomes is something special. Andy Reid is the perfect coach for him. You alluded to all this coming in. Now, I think this is going to be more of a factor of what the heck is going to happen with the front office, what kind of consistency is going to come. Brett Veach, their general manager, man, this offseason scared me. I'm kind of going off on a tangent more on, like, do I see them being a dynasty coming forward? And I think they have the talent, but it really scares me from a standpoint of, it reminds me a lot of like the Green Bay Packers and how amazing Aaron Rodgers was when he first came out. Because remember, I know we can kind of go back. The game was different 10 years ago. It was very exciting. Aaron Rodgers was putting up 105 QB rating easily. And then he just wins a Super Bowl, continue going. They start paying certain players, and then the rest is history on the cheapness of the front office. That's where a lot of these teams are going to come in, and it's going to get scary if you're looking at this dynasty, because you got to keep the team together. The Patriots were so good at it because during their time they were able to pick players up on cheap contracts who are maybe older, haven't shown their potential. And Bill Belichick was like, you get out there, you're going to get 10 sacks this year. Then after that, you're going to go out and get one more sack your whole entire career, buddy. So like things much like that. I don't know why I use that accent, but that's really what happened there. And everyone just seemed to buy into the culture all the time. Now, I think these guys have the best chance because of pure talent at Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. That head coach quarterback duo is amazing. And Andy Reid, as you alluded to, I was going to talk about how he changes with the NFL. That's why he's been a head coach for so long. You already talked about it. So I do think there's a chance there, but I think it's going to be a lot harder than people are making it sound. Nick Wright coming out and being like, they're going to win 2, 3, 4, 5 championships by the time Patrick Mahomes is over. And I'm like, you got to slow down. Like, I think people are going to be a little bit more shocked this upcoming season on how many players they lost on defense and the way they went and tried to replace those players. It's going to be hard for them. I don't think it's going to be as big a walk in the park as people are assuming it's going to be. They feel like they're going to come out and go win a Super Bowl this year when they have a team like the Ravens and like there's some good teams. The Cleveland Browns have gotten better. Sorry, I always have to throw that in there. But there's teams getting better in the AFC. It's more of an even playing field. And people just have a recency bias right now because of the Super Bowl, honestly.
Mhm.
And I think it's going to be hard, but I also do see there being a chance of it happening.
Ozzy will go to the dynasty expert because who else but a Patriots fan can tell us about dynasties. Do you see any parallels from this dynasty to, and I know you haven't been watching since 2001 because none of us really were, but do you see any parallels between this Chiefs team and Patriots teams that that you recognize, or is this kind of something new territory and you're not buying into the hype?
I'm not buying into the hype one bit. I don't see any similarities, Steve, because yes, you've got the quarterback, but Zach had mentioned it a little bit with the Bill Belichick accent that he put on. You almost hit it. But that's what they did. They went out and got guys on cheaper contracts. The Chiefs have spent and spent and spent. They literally have $177 in cap space for 2020. And then in 2021, they have $16 million in cap space, which is fine. And you can work a little bit there, but that's not a lot. And then you're going to have these inflated salaries, obviously, with Patrick Mahomes getting more, Chris Jones, who they just re-signed, getting more, Frank Clark, and all these guys who they've signed to massive contracts. They're giving them top tier money. And then all of a sudden, where's your depth? Tomac mentioned it the other day when we were talking to him about this. There's no room for injuries or anything like that. And those are just common in the NFL. You don't want to hope that it happens, obviously, to another team, but that's just the fact of life in the NFL. There are going to be injuries to players on different teams. And if a big player for the Chiefs gets injured, then all of a sudden who's filling in? Because they don't have the money spent on good quality depth. So yes, there's a chance that it happens, but there's also a chance I leave this podcast and go walk on the street and get hit by a car. That's how I feel about the situation. I think that there's going to be some serious ramifications that the Chiefs are going to run into here. And it's going to be very similar to the Packers situation because they're not going to be able to spend on these big free agents to keep people coming in, quality players coming in, So the Patrick Mahomes effect, you could argue like maybe that's why players come in and stuff like that. But I look at teams like the Ravens who are just right there. And I look at what happened to get the Chiefs to the Super Bowl. They needed to come back from rough starts. And if you're playing against teams that are not going to be choke artists like the Titans and Texans were, that's just the Texans. It doesn't surprise me one bit because Bill O'Brien is such a freaking loose cannon that I just wouldn't how I feel about him after the Hopkins trade. Like he's a wild animal. So they blow that lead and then the Titans do the same. But if you have a quality team there, quality coaching, like they don't choke, the Chiefs aren't in the Super Bowl. And that's a huge what if. I give them credit for coming back. But at the end of the day, they're not always going to be able to make those comebacks. And that should be what my point is in that, is that there are teams that are going to finish strong. They're going to start strong and finish strong and not going to give the Chiefs a chance to come back exactly like the Texans and Titans did. And because it was such a marginal way for them to make those comebacks and to get into the Super Bowl that way, I'm not buying it. And I think that there will be a new team repping the AFC next year.
All right, let's end with this then. It's 2020 right now, and there'll be 10 champions this decade. Obviously, hoping there's a season. There's going to be a season. All right. How many Super Bowls are the Chiefs going to win this decade? I'll go first. I think they win 3 Super Bowls this decade.
Including the one they currently?
Nope, that was 2019. This is 2020. I think they win 3 more Super Bowls out of the 10.
Bolin, there is no way.
Not in a row. Not in a row. It could be 2020, 2024, and 2027. I think they win 3 Super Bowls with Patrick Mahomes.
You're saying they're Patriots-esque.
This decade.
So you're saying they're going to be the next dynasty.
I am saying they're going to be the next dynasty of the NFL.
That's 4 Super Bowls in 11 years for those counting. according to Steve.
Let's go to Zach first. We'll let Ozzy cool off. Zach, how many Super Bowls are Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs winning between 2020 and 2029?
Holy man, that's a big one.
I just shoot from the hip. That's all this is.
Yeah, no, I honestly believe they can win two more. That's the realistic attack here. I feel it's more you come in with this team, they have a potential of winning one with the team they have now, and then down the road they hopefully can get the consistency in the front office to then win another one. So that's 3 total with Patrick Mahomes, but 2 in the next decade is my realistic attack on that.
All right, Ozzy.
Yeah. I think 1 is fair to say, and I don't think that's too pessimistic either, because yes, Patrick Mahomes is freaking amazing, but we've seen a lot of amazing quarterbacks not win multiple Super Bowls. And so to say 3, Steve Bullen, I'm putting you on the freaking spot right now. To say 3 when the Patriots, even in their best, I don't even think they won 4 in 11 years, if I have my math correct. Yeah, there's a nice little break in between.
10-year gap, yeah.
So you're saying they are like the tippy top in a league where there is so much parity, and you were the one that talked about parity last year. You're saying the Chiefs, with $177 in cap space, are going to be winning 4 Super Bowls.
But Ozzy, we talked about their uphill battles, right? Like we saw them come back from a 24-0 deficit, and whatever they were down against the Titans 14-0. Like we've seen this team claw. I don't think they need to be a 1 seed or a 2 seed to go make a Super Bowl run. If this year, I think they'll be a top 2 seed, but if in 2024 they're a wild card team, I'm not betting against Patrick Mahomes to go and get hot at the right time. I think the way this team strikes me as different is just the mentality of Andy Reid in that front office. Pete Carroll and John Schneider, as much as I love that duo and how much they've brought Seattle, they got stuck in their ways and they kept trying to build the same team since 2014, and it hasn't worked, and they haven't given Russell the keys yet. He's turning 32 this year. We saw Mike McCarthy continue to play conservative football with Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback. You look at the 2014 NFC Championship, they kicked 3 field goals from the 1-yard line when Aaron Rodgers is your quarterback. I mean, I just don't see those kinds of mistakes, and those are very like zoomed in mistakes, but you can even look at a broader picture. I don't see this franchise making the same mistakes that Green Bay and Seattle did, the 2 teams I thought could potentially be dynasties when they won their Super Bowls. I don't see this franchise making those same kind of errors, and that's why I have so much confidence that 1 through 7, put them as any seed you want. I think they can make the run because they have the tools to do it. And even as the rest of their roster kind of starts churning out, because they're going to lose these players to free agency, they're going to want to get paid. I think as long as you have that duo of Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, I don't think you can rule this team out at any given point for the rest of this decade.
Yeah, I'm in total disagreement, because we don't know how they're going to handle this cap hell that they've inevitably put themselves in. So it's any team could be like, we don't know, like Zach said, Brett Veach, long-term, how is he going to overcome this? I just can't get behind anything more than 1 more in the next 4 years, because, and I say 4 years because that's when most of these contracts are going to start coming up and they have to start making some big decisions. But that's going to 3, Steve Bullen. Holy heck.
Yes, sir. Any last
words?
With
your freaking, that's bad news for your Seahawks, buddy.
Oh, we'll win the other 3 of the decade.
And the Browns.
Seahawks will win. Yeah,
watch out.
Speaking of the Seahawks, guys, we're on our last division, believe it or not, of our prediction series. So right in time for the start of training camp, when I'm sure injuries will happen and we'll have to redo this all again. But no, in all seriousness, really excited to roll out the NFC West for our last division here, and definitely look forward to our social media as we're going to roll out all our individual predictions and kind of see how they differ from each other. So keep an eye on that for our Instagram, Facebook. We'll put them on all 3. Nice graphics of our finalized predictions. But for the time being, fellas, the NFC West looks like it's going to be one of the most competitive, if not the most competitive division in football in 2020. You have each of these teams, and I know the coaching staffs have changed, have made at least the conference championship game in the last decade. And now you've had some turnover, but the Cardinals are on the rise. The Rams were just in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. The Niners were just in the Super Bowl. The Seahawks were 11-5 and are in the divisional round last year before the wheels came off. So these are some good ass teams here. So I'm really excited to see how you guys have this all shaking out. And I'm sure I'm not going to be any pleased to hear Ozzy's predictions because I just have a feeling he has it out for me now. But guys, let's start with the Los Angeles Rams. They're moving into that beautiful new SoFi Stadium. It's not sci-fi. I think it's SoFi. They're sharing with the Chargers. But to me, that's probably the most exciting part of their offseason. Let's go through their losses first here, guys. They lost Greg Zuerlein, their kicker, Todd Gurley, Clay Matthews, Dante Fowler, Roby Coleman, their nickel corner, Corey Littleton, their leading tackler at linebacker, and Brandon Cooks, who they traded off to Houston. Their biggest free agent addition, and maybe you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, that I noticed was Leonard Floyd, a defensive end from the Chicago Bears. And then they extended Whitworth, who's already like 40, to a 3-year deal, which really confused me. And you want to talk about salary cap issues, Ozzy. Jared Goff's eating up 14% of their cap this year and 16% of their cap next year. And then I went and looked at their draft grades, and they went and took a running back, I believe in the first round or might have been early in the second round, Cam Akers. That got a D grade. And then Van Jefferson at wide receiver, that got an F grade, I saw on one of the sites. And then Terrell Lewis, a linebacker / edge player, that got an A grade. So they might have fortified their pass rush a little bit. All that being said, guys, and it's going to make more sense when we talk about how good these other teams are and how much they improved. I have the Rams going 6-10 this year and finishing last in the NFC West. I like McVay. I think he's a very innovative mind. I think he helps out Goff a lot more than what people really realize. I don't know if Goff is really the one to get them there, but they paid him like he's the one to get them there. And I think that's just too much to be paying a mediocre quarterback. And I just don't see this team really extending to great heights in 2020. I want to go to Zach first, and let's see your thoughts on the LA Rams.
Man, there's this like funny thing that I've noticed about the Rams through social media, through Bleacher Report, wherever I am. It's hilarious where all these players are listed off that they lost, like you said, Steve. And then they're like, but they got Leonard from the Bears. And it's like, he's the saving grace of this whole team because they made one good offseason. I don't even know if you would consider it like a great signing anyways.
It's like,
yeah, they're like covering up a bunch of shit with a little bit of piss. And like, everyone's like, oh my God, they're going to be so good. And it's like, guys, we're seeing the problem here, right? And it's not great. It's not great at all. Guys, if I was to tell you they also, on top of all the losses and coming into this season with a depleted roster, it feels like they're not accepting this rebuild that they need to be accepting and going into. They also have the 10th hardest schedule in the NFL coming in one of the hardest divisions. I just see this falling apart. And then, honestly, I agree with you, Steve. I really like McVay, but like as the trajectory is going down, what if McVay hits the market? That'd be so interesting to see where he goes. Sorry, it's on a different tangent, but like they can't blame all this on McVay is kind of what I'm getting at here. And I have the Rams going 5-11 with a hard schedule, loss of so many key players. Like they have their cornerstone players and then not a lot. And then they're going to play in a division with juggernauts. I really see them falling off, even with the creative mind. What I have on my notes is McVay really, he's a great answer, but they're not going to fix every problem with that one answer. I can't see it. The cap held, they've attacked this like retooling in a horrible way, and that schedule is just ugly.
Yeah, I'm right there with you guys. And like on their 2018 Super Bowl run, they had one of the best offensive lines in the league, and that obviously helped Todd Gurley. It helped Jared Goff. Last year, you started to see it. Maybe it's with age or whatever the case. You started to see it get pretty bad in LA, and then you sign Andrew Whitworth, who's 39 years old, to a 3-year extension. That just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, where is the logic there when you already start to see the age on the offensive line? I'm totally baffled by that. And so I'm totally with you guys. And I looked at I wanted to get excited. I was like, come on, Rams, show me something. But you traded Brandon Cooks, and Brandon Cooks, yes, he's injured. He's got quite the injury history. And you've got Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, Cam Akers, who they drafted, of course. But that's not exciting me. That's not striking any fear in me when you think about it that way. And like, again, with the offensive line, that can't be understated or overstated, because this is such a tough division. You're in a division with Chandler Jones and Jordan Phillips, and now who else did they just draft? Isaiah Simmons. Like, you've got a tough defense. That's just the Cardinals. Jadeveon Clowney could be back with the Seahawks, but they've got a solid defensive line without him even. And then you've got the 49ers, who were just the best defense in the league last year. So who do you have to just pound the rock? Cam Akers. Perfect. This is not even close to a Super Bowl contending team. And I am with Zach. I have them going 5-11 this year.
Wow.
And finishing fourth.
I thought you guys
at all.
I thought you guys would be like shocked at me going as low as 6-10, and maybe you guys would have like some 8-8 or 7-9 records. But I am shocked to hear you guys had 5-11. But I agree with most of what you're saying, or all what you're saying. It's Goff is not the guy that's going to elevate this team in like a Russell Wilson and drag what should have been like a 7-win team to 11 wins. Like I've said it like on numerous episodes now, he is spoon-fed his offense. I believe McVay's making the reads for him and his thing until the mic shuts off at 15 seconds left in the play clock. Like, a lot of it's designed of where he's going to go. And yeah, I don't see a very bright future for this team. We talked about, I forget, probably almost a year ago now, like, and how they went all in. We talked about going all in as opposed to building for the future or trying to extend your window. And they went all in on the window. And I don't know if they faced injuries last year. Obviously, Gurley, they went 7-9 and missed the playoffs. And now that window appears to be shut after scoring 3 points in the Super Bowl. What are you going to do? Guys, next team I want to talk about is probably one of the most exciting teams I'm most excited about in this division, and that's the Arizona Cardinals. We saw Kyler Murray have a really successful rookie season last year. They went 5-10-1, which is a lot better than what many had thought they were going to go. And they lost David Johnson, A.Q. Shipley, one of their guards, and receiver Farrell Cooper. But you contrast that with DeAndre Hopkins in that infamous trade with the Houston Texans. Devondre Campbell, who hit career highs with the Falcons in tackles, tackle for losses, interceptions, and forced fumbles. So they just casually added a guy coming off a career best season. Devin Kennard and Jordan Phillips, who Ozzie mentioned. And then in the draft, they go and get the Swiss Army knife of defensive players in Isaiah Simmons and Josh Jones at right tackle, who can immediately come in and solidify the right side of that line, which I thought their line was really bad last year. It turns out they only allowed 9 sacks. Their four of their five starters started all 16 games. They only allowed a combined total of 9 sacks, and they set a franchise record in rushing yards per carry at 5. So losing Shipley is kind of concerning to me, but aside from that, I think this team has a long way to go. I'm only a little bit worried about their defense. They ranked 23rd in rush defense last year, which surprised me. I thought they'd be a little better at that, but they have some later draft picks who they drafted linebacker and D tackles to kind of fortify that. So a lot's going to hinge on those guys. And then they ranked 31st in pass yards allowed per game and 30th in opponent's completion percentage. So that's a little concerning considering the big names they have back there in Budda Baker and Patrick Peterson. And aside from Peterson, they have Jalen Thompson, who I already mentioned, Baker, and Byron Murphy. They're all under 25, so they have a very young secondary. They're going to kind of have to overachieve in my mind if this season's going to go as planned. But all that being considered, and so I have a little time to breathe here, I have the Cardinals going 9-7 and securing the 7th seed and making the playoffs in 2020.
Let's go.
3rd place, but they'll be making the playoffs with a 9-7 record. A lot of things have to go right. They got to fortify that defense. It was a little not as good as I thought it was. We're looking at those stats. I think their pass rush is strong, but their secondary and run defense has to get shorn up, has to solidify. And then they're going to need another repeat performance from that offensive line. And if Josh Jones can come in and be an immediate impact player, I think this is a playoff team and one you shouldn't sleep on. Ozzie, let's go right back to you. Ended off on the last one. Let's go back to you for the Cardinals.
Heck yeah, I'm glad you did, Steve. I might be the Cardinals' biggest hype artist, honestly. I love everything about this team. I love what they've done. Steve, you're talking about kind of shoring up that defensive, that defense. will go. You mentioned it, Devondre Campbell and Devin Kennard combined for almost 200 tackles last year. So that's pretty good depth if you're talking about maybe stopping the run a little bit more. You got Isaiah Simmons. Everybody said it, like linebacker, safety, whatever. I think they were one of the worst, if not the worst, team covering tight ends last year. So he'll be a huge addition there to kind of slow them down. And I love the defense. And Steve, you mentioned it, and like it's young, and because of that reason, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt for years past. Buda Baker's entering, I think, his contract year. Jordan Hicks, I think he might have had, he had about 140 tackles last year. I'm not sure where that ranks in his career, but he had obviously a pretty good year. And Byron Murphy, I was really big on. I thought he would have been a first-round corner in last year's draft. So I really love that whole defense. There's Pro Bowlers all over the defense, and Patrick Peterson, Chandler Jones, Jordan Phillips had almost 10 sacks last year. So it's just like a mixing pot. And the way I went about that, I know it's very discombobulated, but just those names is all. If you're a listener and you're like, who the hell are these guys? All you need to know is that this defense has the pieces. And Tomac is not very high on Vance Joseph, rightfully so. As a head coach, I wouldn't be either. But as a defensive coordinator, when you're given these pieces, let's just see what you can do. I would love to see it, and I hope that it does work out. But if we're putting the defense aside, let's look at the offense for 2 seconds here. You got Kyler Murray, who's obviously pretty good. He's going to improve in year 2. He was guilty of committing 23 of those sacks that were committed to him last year. Kenyon Drake and Chase Edmonds. Chase Edmonds proved that he can be pretty solid. Max Williams at tight end, who you get from the Ravens, and the Ravens seem to be pretty good at choosing their tight ends, so I trust that. And then DeAndre Hopkins to Larry Fitzgerald, Christian Kirk. Are you kidding me? That is an offense that is going to be feisty, and that is not going to go with the defense. I think you've got perfect complementary football on that team, and I am just super, super stoked to see what this team can do. The offensive line got way better last year between 2018 and 2019. Let's see what happens again. You get Josh Jones, like you said, Steve. So I've got this team going 10-6, and that's good enough for second in this division.
Oh no!
One win better than you, Steve. So it's not too bad, but this team is ready. I love everything about this team. This is perfect team building right here.
I already don't like your predictions because I already know who you have in first, and I'm just sick to my stomach already. Zach, what say you on the Cardinals? A lot has already been said, but I'm curious as to your thoughts. You're very you love watching the offense go to work. I feel like you're a fan of Cliff. What are your thoughts on this team?
Huge fan of the team. Okay, I really like what they're doing, but we all need to go like this and just pump the brakes just a little bit. All right, all right. Lots of great moves. I love it. This is a new rebuilding team that's really, really exciting. I'm going to tell you guys a little story. There was this one team that was super hyped going into a season once with a bunch of young, amazing talent. Maybe people have argued some of the best roster they've seen in years and years and years. That team didn't do too good because it was full of young players, a second-year quarterback, and they couldn't gel. That's the Cleveland Browns of 2019, by the way. I just wanted to point that out there. Now, I don't think it's going to be a historic drop because I don't feel the same kind of hype that was coming from the Browns at that same level where Browns people were talking they could be a Super Bowl contender and stuff like that. However, with this team, I also don't want our listeners sitting here going, Zach, you hate them. You really hate them by saying this. No, I really like the Cardinals, and I actually really, really like what they're doing. I like their draft. I'm not going to allude to all the players that you guys have been talking about, but as Ozzy was saying about a mixing pot, it's going to take time for this team to gel. Kyler Murray had a good rookie season. He still has a lot of growth to have happen here. And yes, they're surrounding him with the right weapons, but things are going to – this is a second-year head coach and a second-year quarterback too. You guys got to remember that. That's coming from a fan of both those players.
Wasn't McVay a second-year head coach when he made the Super Bowl? I'm not saying this is a Super Bowl
Right,
team,
no.
but I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
We already had that as a title, but he is just saying.
I'm just saying.
Thank you. And what did McVay go his first season when he was there?
Well, it wasn't good. Yeah.
No. Did
wait.
they not go like 11-5?
Was that his
Yeah,
first year?
Yeah, his first year was
Oh.
2017, and they went 11-5 and lost to the Falcons in the wild card, I believe.
I don't put McVay and Kingsbury on the same level quite yet. We'll have to see what comes of it after. And that's coming from a guy who hired him in Madden. I hired Kingsbury in Madden.
That's the stamp of approval we all need.
I fired him after that year, though. We went like 3-13 or something. I was really happy. But I just feel like there's going to be a little bit more growing pains than what a few hype artists are feeling, guys. And I'm just maybe being devil's advocate here. But that being said, you guys are probably thinking I'm going to say they're going 5-11 here. I'm giving them a very respectable 7-9, and that's a really good growth pattern from where they're going from 5 wins to 7. And then I think the following year is the year they can really do some damage.
The world
That's
is their
spoken
oyster.
like a true Browns fan who is just used to that nice, steady trajectory. I think that this team is the team to surprise. There's always that one team that just really surprises. Last year it could have been the 49ers. I think this year it's the Cardinals going from 5-10-1 to 10-6.
That trajectory, Oz, that Browns trajectory, you mean, like where they constantly get up to 5 wins, then back down to 1, and then up to 5 wins, and then down.
Well, didn't they get 7 last year?
No, they got 6 last year, and then 7 the year before. So the trajectory's coming down.
More of a roller coaster, if anything.
Yeah. But no, that's good. Fun. 7-9 Cardinals.
All right. Because I don't want to hear Ozzy's opinion on the Seahawks quite yet, we're going to go to the 49ers next. And you know what? Bias aside, as much as Jimmy G makes my blood fucking boil, I have to give props. I have to give props to this team and Kyle Shanahan and Jimmy G and that defense and Richard Sherman, because they were a really good team last year. I mean, we saw them go toe-to-toe with the New Orleans Saints. We saw them go – their games with Seattle are almost classic, 2 classic games against each other in one season. Both are getting re-shown on NFL Network every day. It's like, you know, you can't ask for much more. And they get right to the Super Bowl. And, you know, in Kyle Shanahan fashion, he needs to get a monkey off his back, and choking in Super Bowls. Obviously, he was the offensive coordinator for the Falcons when they blew that 28-3 lead. You know, things kind of came unglued towards the end there. Jimmy G missed some throws in the fourth quarter. But this team as a whole, I mean, you know, what a squad that they've assembled here, and they've been smart with the salary cap. They've made really calculated trades, and I just want to go over a few of them now. I think this offseason they may have come out as a net negative based on who they lost compared to what they gained. But the core of this team and the coaching staff, to me, and not losing Robert Saleh at defensive coordinator, really speaks to me, and it's why I'm just going to say it right away. I have this team going 13-3 again and finishing first in the NFC West. But let's talk about some of their losses. So they traded DeForest Buckner to the Indianapolis Colts. They lost Emmanuel Sanders to the Saints, and then they lost Joe Staley to retirement. Sheldon Day, and then Mike Pearson at guard, who started 30 of their last 32 games over the last 2 seasons. And then they went and traded Marquise Goodwin to the Philadelphia Eagles. So there's some significant losses there. But their additions, Trent Williams at left tackle. I mean, I don't think people are talking about this enough. Joe Staley was elite Hall of Famer, but he was 30-something years old. And you got Trent Williams, who's had like pretty much a full year off to just kind of recover, similar to Cam Newton, and get his body right. And now he's going to be their starting left tackle. They signed Travis Benjamin, who feels like he's been in the league forever, Zach, compared to when the Browns drafted him. I think Shanahan's going to find some really creative ways to use him if he still has that speed. And then in the draft, they go and get Javon Kinlaw, effectively replacing DeForest Buckner, and then Brandon Ayuk at wide receiver. You know, seeing how he's going to replace Emmanuel Sanders, that's a pretty high bar to clear. But to me, that's my biggest concern is the starting receiver core. You have Deebo Samuel, Kendrick Bourne, and Brandon Ayuk as your top 3, and then not mentioning George Kittle at tight end. I'm really interested in seeing how that group kind of meshes with Jimmy G, especially with no offseason if essentially taking place over the last, since the season ended. So I'm really curious as to how those guys are going to get together. But the defense is still stacked. You got Bosa, Kinlaw, Armstead, Alexander, Warner, Richard Sherman, Jaquoski Tart, Jimmy Ward, and then you still have that strong run game. You still have Shanahan calling the plays. They're running the ball down people's throats, 32 rushing attempts per game. And it's not just stupid rushing attempts. It's a lot of misdirection using the fullback, Kyle Juszczyk. I think I actually got that right.
I think you did.
Ozzy and I were having this debate. I think we've seen the best of Jimmy G last year. Like, I think to me, that's kind of like the best you're going to see of Jimmy G. I don't know if you're going to see him go and throw for 40 touchdowns or even 35. But what you saw from Jimmy G last year, as much as he grinds my gears, that's all you need from him for this team to win 13 games again and go back to the Super Bowl. I think if he can just replicate what he did last year, good enough. You know what? And I don't know if he'll ever be in that top 5 quarterback in the league conversation. But if he's hoisting a Super Bowl at the end of the day, then who cares, right? Because he just needs to do his job. And I think he will again. I think he's proven himself to be very capable, and that's why I have this team finishing first, not only in the NFC West, but first in the conference at 13 wins. So, Ozzy, we'll go to you because I know you're high on Jimmy G, and I'm curious as to your thoughts.
First of all, I'm just very shocked, Steve. I did not expect this out of you. I was expecting to have to counter the Super Bowl hangover, blah, blah, blah. Which I guess I'll just say this now in case Zach said it. Kyle Shanahan's already had his Super Bowl loss. I think that a lot of the Super Bowl hangover lies on the coach and the coaching staff as they retool for the year after. So I think having that experience of the Falcons loss just a couple years earlier, I think that's it's only going to add fuel to this team's fire, and Kyle Shanahan knows how to rebound from that. But yeah, the Javon Kinlaw draft pick, I think, was fantastic addition and a replacement for DeForest Buckner. I know there's some people who were up in arms because why trade DeForest Buckner if you're just going to go and draft kind of a similar player? And it's for the reasons that you also mentioned, Steve, is cap. They've been making very strategic trades and cap moves, and this is one of them. It's go and get a cheaper guy on a rookie contract, and I think that it's fantastic. We know just from the prospect, Javon Kinlaw, the sky's the limit for this guy. And he is a perfect all-around player on the defensive line, play defensive tackle, he can play defensive end. And he's going to be a perfect little chess piece along that defensive line for Robert Saleh to have fun with. And you add to that with Nick Bosa and others. Like, it's just totally insane, that defense. It's just the rich get richer there. And yes, I wanted to speak to the Sanders loss because it's a pretty big loss, obviously. Like, he's a Pro Bowl talent receiver, and he's had quite a good career. But you add guys into everybody wants to talk about Kyle Shanahan's system, and this is the perfect system to have a guy like that leave, if I'm being quite frank, because you get a guy like Travis Benjamin who's a great speedster, and he can play in the slot and do a lot of the things that Emmanuel Sanders did. And you draft Brandon Ayuk, who is also, like, he can be that replacement guy. He can play on the outside. He's an outside speedster. He's pretty much an Emmanuel Sanders light from a prospect perspective. So I really like those pickups for that team and for that offense. And as much as I love Jimmy G, I still think that he can be that 40 touchdown quarterback, Steve. He only had one. Last year, his Super Bowl season was his first full year as a starter. Let that sink in. He's 28 this year, so he's still got lots of football left in him, and that was his first full season as a starter. I think that there's still a lot more room for improvement. But yeah, because of this division, I guess I would say I'm a little bit lower than you, Steve. I have them going 12-4. I think that there's going to be a little bit more grinding, and there is some teams that when you have a defense as good as the 49ers, there could be a drop off the following year. I don't suspect that as much. I just suspect that the talent in the division itself, there's going to be some close games, and I think 12-4 taking the division, that's good enough.
Zach, save me from crying myself to sleep tonight, man. Are the 49ers winning the division in your mind, or what are your thoughts on them?
Don't you worry. I'm playing devil's advocate this
there we go.
pod, I guess. I come back with a bang big time. And man, you know what, guys? I see where you're coming from. And I feel that look of like excitement coming off of a really good year for the 49ers. They looked really good out of nowhere when Jimmy G came back and that defense started clicking. I totally agree. Consistency is going to be the key here. And I'm worried, first of all, that offense, we made it sound like it's going to be consistent. I think teams are going to come in here, prepare for what Kyle Shanahan did. They're taking out Emmanuel Sanders, which I actually feel is a way bigger loss than we're saying here. Emmanuel Sanders was the premier receiver other than Kittle. I don't think Ayuk's going to come in and just tear it up as a rookie. I think losing DeForest Buckner is a bigger deal, and replacing with Kinlaw he's great and he's going to be great, but DeForest Buckner had 3 or 4 years in the league already and was playing at a high level by that point. Kinlaw's going to have to learn the league. I know he has some good players around him as well. However, the biggest thing here is the schedule is getting way more difficult. They have the 4th hardest schedule as well. They go through a gauntlet in the middle of the season. They play the Rams at home, so that, that's winnable. Everyone, we're all saying Rams are down. They're going to the Patriots, going to the Seahawks, home against the Packers, away at the Saints. They go on their bye. They go to the Rams. They're playing the Bills. And honestly, at the beginning of the season, they have it pretty easy with the Cardinals, Jets, Giants, Eagles. However, I could see the Cardinals and Eagles giving them hell there. And then that middle gauntlet, and then also going to the Cowboys and then playing the Seahawks. This team does not have a walk in the park. They had a lot of close games last year. And sorry, Austin, I know you didn't want to hear it. The Super Bowl hangover is going to be real again after Kyle Shanahan came off another blowing defeat. The culture is going to be hard there. I don't know why it's all roses in San Francisco right now. Jimmy didn't look perfect all year. It was because of the good players they had around them. I see the team going 9-7 and finishing second in that division.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I love that defense.
Wow, 9-7.
But I have that 9-7.
I know you haven't done your full NFC predictions yet, but in your mind, is that good enough to sneak in as a 7 seed, or do you think that has them outside looking in?
I'm saying 7 seed right now, but I gotta finalize that first.
That's fair. Any rebuttal, Ozzy, or should we just move on to the Seahawks?
I mean, you can always point to the Super Bowl hangover. I don't see the logic in just saying, "Oh, there's going to be a Super Bowl hangover."
That wasn't my only logic, but
no, yes, I know, but I'm just saying, but you're saying it's going to be real. Like, why is it just a matter of fact it's going to be real?
I'm just saying, I think there's more to it. What I was getting at was there's more to it than just Kyle Shanahan saying he lost his one Super Bowl already, the 28-3 loss. But now he's also adding another one on where he was up 10 points in this one, an easy, well, not easy win ahead of them, clearly, and then getting totally shut out in the last. That's hard on a culture, man. Losing like that in big games over and over again does create a culture.
Just wait till Richard Sherman decides to turn on Jimmy G. That's fun. That'll be fun for them.
Oh yeah, that'll be good.
And honestly, Richard Sherman did not play good in the Super Bowl either. He was quite. I'm wondering
when they're going to move him to safety. I think he has one more year at corner. I mean, he still produced. I mean, he was still an elite corner this year, but that Super Bowl is not a good way to remember him on the way out of that last season. Right. That's for sure. But I'm thinking they might move him to safety in the next couple of years, but it seems like a logical move.
Yeah, no, and I get that. The Super Bowl hangover, that's why I ended with that, because I maybe I should have started with it or put it in the middle somewhere, because I didn't want that being my main reason. But I do think there could be some psychological pain there on Kyle Shanahan, more in the sense you looked at it as he's already been through that. I'm saying now he's been through that again. So you start to build a title after that. You start to get that in your title. What do you remember that coach for? What do you remember that player for? Well, I remember him choking twice in the biggest game of his life, both times. It goes towards the culture, but that's not the only reason.
I feel like that's not rooted in nothing because, granted, I have these guys going 13-3, but you look at the Seahawks the year after they lost, they made it to the divisional round, lost to the Panthers. You look at don't count the Patriots because they're the exception, not the rule. But you look at the Falcons the year after they lost, they made it back to the divisional round, couldn't get past the Eagles. You look at the Rams after they made the Super Bowl, lost. I don't think they didn't make the playoffs last year, went 7-9. So it is draining to get that far and not get it. I think the Niners have a lot more talent than those teams who lost those Super Bowls to get back. And that's why I have them going 13-3 again. But I think there is merit to your point, Zach.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing too about this team is that they're so young. Last year, their Football Outsiders had them ranked as the 7th youngest team in the NFL. And so when you think about that, like, and they're already in Super Bowls and they get better on the offensive line. Yes, they lose some wide receiver who was, yes, really good, but on the whole, this team is young and this team is now experienced in the Super Bowl. And you still have some untapped potential there with the team being so young. I think it's easy to see that they're going to be very good again. So, Zach, I'm a little disappointed in you, but you got to be the devil's advocate sometimes. And July 22nd, 2020, that's the day.
I'm sticking to my guns here, Ozzy, but fair points.
I hope Zach's prediction comes true. I hope mine doesn't now. Okay, guys, I save them for last because why the hell not? The Seattle Seahawks, probably other side from the Arizona Cardinals, probably the biggest enigma in this division. You just don't know what they're going to do. Losses this offseason, you got George Fant, Quentin Jefferson, Al Woods, and Jermaine Ifedi. And then they go and cut DJ Fluker, Justin Britt, essentially disposing of their existing offensive line aside from Dwayne Brown. And then now you have Jadeveon Clowney not coming back. Josh Gordon reportedly wants to be back in Seattle, and Seattle wants him back depending on how his reinstatement meeting goes with Roger Goodell. So I'm hoping that goes well because it sounds like he'd be coming back to Seattle if that's the case. And I think, not sure if that influences your predictions at all. And then on top of that, they lost Michael Kendricks at linebacker who tore his ACL. They won't be bringing him back. They obviously drafted to replace him in Jordan Brooks. And let's talk about their offseason additions. They go and add the 34-year-old Greg Olsen, who had just said he's in the best shape of his life, which is the most cliche thing you can say at that age. But I believe him because I have to. They go and add BJ Finney at center, one of the better pass blocking centers. They get him from Pittsburgh. They bring back Bruce Irvin, who had 7 sacks last year. Brandon Shell at right tackle to replace Jermaine Ifedi, which in my mind is an instant upgrade. Chance Warmack to compete at guard. They trade for Quinton Dunbar, 5th-round pick. He's facing a lot of legal trouble right now. I think that was my favorite move of the offseason until all this robbery nonsense went down. But, I mean, hey, if he's able to play long enough, kind of like Michael Kendricks, he kept playing despite a hanging insider training case over his head. So maybe Dunbar can do the same. And then they go and add Philip Dorsett, which I really love because I think he's an upgrade over Jerron Brown, who we had last year. And then Benson Mayoa, they pick him up from the Raiders. He used to be on the Seahawks way back in the early of the decade there. He actually put up a surprising number of sacks too. So you get those guys on the edges. I'm pretty confident in that. It doesn't seem like Clowney's going to be back. What are you going to do? Draft-wise, they go and get Jordan Brooks, who I think this isn't a move for now, but it's a move for next year, the year after, to kind of – his pro comparison was Bobby Wagner. So what's that tell you? But you can also put him at the weak side linebacker when KJ Wright eventually decides to move on or if he gets hurt or something because he's getting up there in age. I love the addition of Darrell Taylor in the 2nd round. Pure edge rusher, just built to rush the passer. Put him in on a 3rd down, 3rd and long, and just let him get after it. I think that's a great move. But my favorite draft pick of this draft is Damian Lewis at guard. Lance Zierlein, the guy who's doing the NFL.com pre-draft analysis, he called him a forklift dressed as a guard. Like, this guy can just move people. So he's shorter than your typical guards, like shorter than what they had in DJ Fluker. But you stick this guy at right guard, I think he can really move some people around. And I'm really confident in him and Finney kind of solidifying the interior of the line. You got Dwayne Brown at left tackle. And then they go and draft a 6'7" tight end in Colby Parkinson to maybe pair with Greg Olsen, and Will Dissly's coming back. As a whole, losing Clowney hurts, and I feel like almost similar to the Niners, we come out as a net negative as far as who we lost compared to who we gained. But I think a lot of this season is going to depend on the development of the guys we already have. Poona Ford in the middle at D tackle. It's going to be huge in stopping the run with these teams that like to run the football, and the Cardinals who are setting records for yards per carry, and the 49ers who, ranked 4th and or 2nd even in rush attempts per game. LJ Collier is going to have to take a massive step because right now he's a bust after just 1 year. And what the year he had was unacceptable. He's going to have to take a big step at the end point. DK Metcalf needs to be the biggest breakout performer because I think this offense needs to continue taking steps to stop being such a run-oriented team and let Russ cook. I know it's a very cliche saying, but I think a lot of the moves they made this offseason and signing Greg Olsen and getting Philip Dorsett, who's a speedy receiver, I think they kind of lead me to believe that this team could be looking at potentially passing the ball more. They made some shifting of their coaching staff. Austin Davis, who used to be Russell Wilson's backup, is now his quarterback coach. They shifted some things around. So maybe there's like a little bit of altering philosophy there. Brian Schottenheimer's still the offensive coordinator. I understand that. But I have 2 hot takes. I think after this season, we're going to be talking about DK Metcalf as a top 10 receiver in the NFL. And I have the Seahawks going 12-4 and finishing second in the division, 1 win behind the 49ers. If they can somehow sweep the Niners, I think they take first in the division. They're not far off. They finished 11-5 last year after losing 3 of their starting running backs, or not 3 of their 2 of their starting running backs and having to call up Marshawn Lynch. Or no, 3 of their starting running backs. Procise, Carson, and Penny were all hurt. And I think they got bit by the injury bug bad. And Russell Wilson had to do some things that, even he wasn't capable of getting this team over the hump because it was just dragging this corpse to the divisional round. I think if they can stay healthy and Philip Dorsett can outperform Jerron Brown, which I don't think is too difficult, and this line can pass protect better than it has in the past, and they have some new pieces now to do that, I think Seahawks can easily beat their win total from last year by 1. And they'll end up being a 5 seed because of just the way the seeding works, but they won't be too far off from winning this division either. 12-4. I want to go to Zach because I don't want to hear Oz's opinion on the Seahawks. I know where he has them finishing now, but I want to hear Zach's take on the Hawks.
Yeah, of course. Man, I love Russell Wilson. You know that. I'm not just going to come in here and sit here and just be like the Russell Wilson effect. So they're gonna at least go to the divisional round. No, but there is a Russell Wilson effect, and the guy is absolutely amazing. Pulls shit and just fucking runs with it, and then gets to a divisional round. It's insane in an archaic system. However, now if we're going with that archaic system, I think the way they've built depth at tight end, I love the Greg Olsen signing. I really do. He's an older guy. He's been one of my favorite tight ends for a very long time. However, he's not going to just be the only guy. And that's why I like that signing is Disley. And then the guy Parkinson.
Parkinson, yeah.
Yes.
And then they have Hollister as well, who stepped up last year big as well.
Always wearing the Hollister shirts. I love it. It's just, it's really good. They're building up that the tight ends. Carlos Hyde, did you mention?
Oh, I didn't even mention Carlos Hyde. Yeah.
That is one of the most underrated signings on the ones that we put on there. I have a big star beside it because I've seen what Carlos Hyde can do in a run-heavy offense with the Cleveland Browns when he was there for 6 games before we traded him. I think he had 6 touchdowns in 4 games or something, 5, I think it might have been. Actually a beast when you actually get him running with momentum. I think adding that depth to the backfield is only going to help Russell Wilson in that offense. I am in total agreement with you, Steve. DK Metcalf was such a shock to me last year that it turned me into a fan, the way he developed. And now I think he's going to have a full route tree this year going forward. It's going to be scary. I also really like Philip Dorsett coming there. You guys re-signed Bruce Irvin back to you guys, which I love. Bringing in some continuity there, knowing the system. You guys always rally. I don't know why it's a question mark anymore. You guys rally. It seems like you brought in the pieces. Like it wasn't more of just getting undrafted free agents this time. You guys went out in free agency and had a lot of good signings. Kind of, it felt almost like Patriot-like. Patriot-esque is what I was going for. But I really do think Russell Wilson's the guy. You guys made good signings. You guys have the weakest schedule out of all of the teams in the division. You guys have amazing stretch somewhere in there. I forget what it is. It's like
near the end of the year.
Jets, Redskins, Rams at home, and then the hard game with the 49ers. You guys always seem to like start a little rough sometimes and then attack at the end. For that being said, I think you guys win the division at 10-6, and you guys are first, and not much more to say about that.
You have some, I like your predictions, because as tough as this division we say it's going to be, I mean, I think Ozzy and I are going very top heavy and 13, 3, 12, and 4 at the top. But you're saying this division is going to be such a gauntlet that these guys are going to kind of beat each other up, and 10-6 will be good enough to take the division then.
That was literally my thought process when I was making this. I was looking at the schedules, actually. I was thinking about what was lost and what was coming back, and I sat there looking at it. All these teams go through a gauntlet at one point. 49ers go through 2 crazy gauntlets like that. I don't see it being a high win total division at all, actually, with how much of a gauntlet is. Saying the Rams are the worst team there is kind of going like, holy crap, they have a lot of top talent there, and they're going to go 5-11. Like, I don't know. It's pretty crazy.
That's fair. Yeah. Ozzy.
It's insane.
I already know you have the Seahawks finishing 3rd just based on process of elimination. So at least tell me it's going to be above 500 and give us, our listeners, a rationale for behind all this.
All right, Steve. Well, I'm not going to spoil it. I'm going to try to save it till the end of this analysis, but it's going to be really quick. You guys made a lot of good points. You had mentioned it, Steve. A lot of the Seahawks success is going to rely on the development of the young players. And I think that speaks most true to the defensive line, because you got Collier from last year, as you mentioned, and then Darrell Taylor this year. And guys like even Jordan Brooks. I think Jordan Brooks can come in and make an impact right away, even though he was compared to Bobby Wagner. He seems too good to not start right away. And I think that getting that experience will be good. So even if he plays, I'm not sure what kind of role Michael Kendricks played, but if he can play some of that.
I don't want to cut you off, but the Seahawks predominantly played base defense when they probably should have went nickel, but I don't think Pete had enough faith in our nickel cornerback. So we played all 3 linebackers at one time. And if we stick to that, then Brooks will absolutely see the field. So good point.
Which is perfect. So, and I didn't even know that. So that's perfect. So yeah, Jordan Brooks, get him lots of reps. He was a 4-year starter at, I should have put his college down, but 4-year starter. So, he's got that, why am I losing words right now? That
Seahawks take your breath away.
Tenacity. Yeah.
Tenacity. He's got that endurance, or whatever the word is, when you're not getting injured all the time. Thank you for your durability. Thank you. All right. So he's got that. And then, like you said, Steve, Darrell Taylor is a perfect edge rusher. Get him on the defensive end, but you really need those players to come in and make an impact right away. Poona Ford, we know what he's capable of as a run stuffer on the defensive tackle. So I like the pieces. Now it's can we get that production out of them, and that's kind of one thing that has me a little worried. Especially with the loss of Jadeveon Clowney. You guys are kind of all in on those younger pieces. The next thing would be a lot of transactions on the offensive line, which is good because you're kind of making those investments in surrounding Russell Wilson with the talent. But I went kind of meta when I did my prediction for the Seahawks. Without the preseason and with training camp kind of altered and things like that, and with so much so many moving pieces on the offensive line, I think that we can see the Seahawks get off to a slower start because, there are those instances where you're like, that team just needs a little bit more chemistry. I think this is exactly one of those cases because you guys have so many new offensive linemen that are going to be vying for starting positions. They are capable of doing so. So it's going to be a lot of new faces in the locker room. And that kind of had me a little bit worried that you guys get off to a slow start as a result. And so that's a lot of what my prediction is hanging in the balance. With that being said, I probably would have you below 500 if it wasn't for Russell Wilson. So just hope that he doesn't opt out of this season. If he opts out of the season for his family, obviously, personally,
I'll say
that's
this.
Great. But
if Geno Smith is the starting quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks and he somehow leads us to the playoffs, I will convert to Satanism. Like I there's no other way to say it. Like there,
oh my God.
Like if Geno Smith leads this team to the playoffs,
Geno Smith.
Is there even a God? Like, like, not to offend our religious listeners out there, but this team is like a 5-win team without Russell Wilson, Ozzy. I couldn't say it any better.
You take Wilson out of that. You take Wilson out of that team over the last decade. Like,
yeah,
what are they?
Yeah, I realized what I said was pretty obvious. So thank you for really just hammering that point into the ground. Clearly, this Seahawks segment for myself has not been my best speaking moment. Words have been very difficult to come by. But anyways, yes, if Russell Wilson is not the quarterback, the Seahawks will suck. I think that for the most part, they'll suck anyways. But Russell Wilson will get them above 500 because that's the Russell Wilson effect. I have them going 9-7, and like Zach's 49ers selection, I have to find out. I have to do some math. I got to go into the lab, do some math, do some digging. I'll see if they make the 7th seed. I don't know. I'll say that right now. I don't think they do. But if they do, then all the power to you, Steve. You can celebrate. But this is how this team is going to finish. You got Trey Flowers and Shaq Griffin as your starting corners, your 2 corners.
No, unless Dunbar can play.
And Dunbar, I was excited for you about that Dunbar trade. I was upset that you guys got him because I wanted the Redskins to keep him. There's obviously a lot going on.
The Washington Football Club.
Oh, sorry. Washington Football Club. I'm sad they got rid of him. Anyways, so there needs to be some consistency at the cornerback position. Those 2 guys, they're very young, and they have shown that they can kind of take on that role at times. But during the playoffs, they kind of went MIA. Not gonna lie, and I didn't like to see it. You hate to see that in the biggest game of the year, and I'm just gonna. I don't think that the defense is. I think that's going to be your weak spot for sure.
I think for the secondary, lots going to rely on Quandre Diggs. When he was healthy, the Seahawks were 4-1 in the regular season, but he missed some games due to a sprained ankle. So not something you can say he's injury prone on. I think it was just a bad roll, and he missed a couple of games, and that's when we lost. We lost like 3 of our last 4 games towards the end of the regular season last year. We could have been 13-3 had we won against the Cardinals and the 49ers those last 2 weeks, but the wheels just came off and went from looking at potentially a number 1 seed to being the 5 seed and having to go to Lambeau in January, which is not fun for anybody. But Quandre Diggs, that's a name to keep an eye on because we got Bradley McDougald and him. And if those 2 guys can stay healthy, I think that's a pretty not serviceable. I think that's an above average safety tandem in comparison to the rest of the NFL. I probably put it top 10, and I think they can get some work done. I think that really help out Trey Flowers. And if Trey Flowers isn't starting and it's Dunbar and Griffin, then I think that's a really good secondary, but a lot has to kind of be juggled and figured out there. But the Seahawks missed the playoffs at 9-7 in 2017, and it led to a lot of staff turnover. Bevel was fired. Tom Cable was fired. Chris Richard was fired. Pete Carroll's contract's up at the end of 2021. I will end on the Seahawks segment of this. If the Seahawks miss the playoffs, does Pete Carroll retire?
I mean, he's guaranteed his money anyways, so might as well.
And we'll leave that to the listener.
Yeah, we have a lot of undrafted. We have a lot of unrestricted free agents after this year, so they're saying it could be another retooling year, and maybe we can go hire Kansas City's offensive coordinator. That'd be great. I love Pete, but I just think if he doesn't adapt this year, then we're kind of pissing away Russell Wilson's prime, and that's a problem to me. So, guys, I think we're running like at an hour and a half already here. Quickly, real Canadian corner here. Winnipeg, Calgary, and Regina all submitted bids to be the hub city. Ended up going to Winnipeg, which rightfully so. I think they have the best handle on COVID in comparison to especially Alberta. And Saskatchewan's having some cases spike up lately. But in my mind, it's a little too late. I think they have the self-imposed deadline. That's coming up on Friday. And so your guess is as good as mine if this thing's going through or not. Some players want to play. Others will not play for a third of their salary. I don't blame them one bit. We hold our breath as Canadian football fans, but it's not looking pretty because I feel like this probably should have been decided like a month ago. But quick thoughts on that, guys, before we wrap up.
I agree with you, Steve. I like Winnipeg as the hub city. I think it's perfect, even just geographically wise. It's kind of in the middle. You know what I mean?
Newer stadium.
Yeah, exactly. One of the nicer stadiums in the league. Way too little, too late. I also am in the same agreement. As much as that sucks, and I don't want to say that because CFL is like a big part of our hearts here, and especially on third and wrong, it really freaking sucks to think that way. I still have that glimmer of hope, and I'm going to keep that until something's for sure. But it feels like this should have been attacked a lot earlier.
Yeah, I think it's. I'm with you guys. We did the math last week, I think, Steve, on the pod, and it was like $9,000 Canadian that people would be
From American, they'd be taken home, so the American players don't have a lot of incentive to come up here.
Yeah, so it doesn't make a lot of sense, and a lot of our league is American and international players, so you hate to see it, but wash our hands of this year, and let's move on and get ready for 2021, where the Alouettes will take on the Saskatchewan Roughriders in the Grey Cup, and the Alouettes will win.
Okay, we'll cross our fingers for now, and then we'll wash our hands after they decide. So we'll do two things with our hands. I really forgot, guys. Just a quick recap on our predictions. So I had the Rams going 6-10, finishing last. The Cardinals at 9-7 and third, making the playoffs. The Seahawks 12-4, finishing second and likely being the 5 seed, and the 49ers 13-3, first seed in the NFC West and first seed in the conference. Zach, real quick, what were yours, just to recap for our listeners?
For sure. I got the Rams going 5-11. Cardinals improving to 7-9 under the new regime, not regime of front office, blah, blah, blah. Players that they're rebuilding with. 49ers take a dip at 9-7. Super Bowl hangover, Aussie. No, I had to. And Seahawks go 10-6, win the division with a little bit of that spice from Russell Wilson.
Russ Spice.
I don't know if you can hear the dogs barking right now, Zach, but they're barking at your take about the 49ers. Anyways, I got the Rams going 5-11 and finishing fourth. The Seahawks finishing 9-7 and third. The Arizona Cardinals are the team of 2020, and they're going to exceed expectations and go 10-6. And then the 49ers at 12-4. Let's go, Jimmy G. Let's get another Super Bowl appearance.
Only an appearance. And
we'll just take the appearances. Yeah, we'll just take the appearances. That's okay.
Man, Ozzy, you are the dreamer of this podcast. You know it.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone, you can find me on Twitter at SteveBolin22. If you want to tweet your Seahawks takes at me, or any takes, really, I'm happy to balance them out. You can find me on Instagram at SteveBolin_. Check out all our agency socials at The Amateur Agency, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Zach, because you're back, where can the fine folks find you?
They can find me living the dream on Instagram at Zach Foth at _ It's been a while, guys. Putting my plug in. And at Twitter at Zach Foth. See you guys there.
Aussie, where can people find your anti-Seahawks bias there?
You can find my 49ers propaganda at Austin Paul _. That's Austin with a Y, not an I. And that's Instagram and Twitter. I don't know if I said that. I was too busy talking about my 49ers propaganda. See you there. Actually read, Washington Football Club propaganda as well. Hask King.
It's King. Thanks for tuning in. See you guys next week. Godspeed.
Bye.